Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Today we're diving into something truly fascinating, the sun. Specifically, what's brewing for June 25th to 30th, 2025.
Yeah, that window.
And, how it might actually affect your everyday life.
Exactly.
Our mission here is to take this stack of reports, these forecasts, and really pull out what you need to know about this upcoming solar storm risk.
And what's really insightful, I think, is that the forecast points to a G2 storm, which is classed as moderate.
Moderate, okay.
But the key thing here is its recurrent nature. That makes it much more predictable than, say, a sudden flare.
Ah, okay, so not a surprise event.
Not really. It's a known phenomenon, which gives us a valuable window to prepare.
That makes sense.
And understanding what it could mean is crucial because moderate, well, it definitely doesn't mean negligible in our super connected world.
Right. We should probably clarify that G scale quickly. G1 to G5.
Good point. Yeah, NOAA scale runs G1, which is minor, up to G5, that's extreme. So G2 is, on the lower end.
Lower end, but still potentially impactful.
Exactly. As we'll see, the effects can be, well, anything but minor depending on the technology involved.
So what exactly is expected then? And maybe what's the biggest misconception about a storm that's only a G2?
Okay, so NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center, SWPC, they're forecasting this G2, moderate storming, as likely around June 25th, 26th.
Those 2 days specifically.
Yeah, that's the main window. And importantly, it's not being driven by a huge solar flare or a big coronal mass ejection hitting us directly.
Okay, so what is causing it then?
It's mainly influenced by what's called a recurrent negative polarity coronal hole high-speed stream.
Okay, break that down a bit. Coronal hole.
Think of it like a stable dark spot on the sun, almost like a gap.
Right.
And it acts like a continuous wind tunnel, basically, blasting out solar material at high speed.
Like a hose pointed towards us?
Kinda, yeah. And this negative polarity bit, that just means it interacts with Earth's magnetic field in a particularly effective way. And it's predictable because the hole rotates around with the sun.
Gotcha. And the misconception about G2?
That it's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
That you only need to care about the big G4s or G5s.
Which clearly isn't the case. So why should we pay close attention to this moderate G2? It sounds relatively minor on that scale.
Because our modern infrastructure is just so vulnerable. Even these mid-level storms can have really disproportionate impacts. History shows us this.
Examples.
Okay, take GPS, GNSS systems. Back in May 2024, there was a G5 storm, a big one, yes.
I remember that one.
It caused GPS errors up to 70 meters for U.S. farmers.
70 meters? Wow.
Yeah, huge errors. It led to over $500 million in lost profit just from delayed corn planting.
$500 million just from GPS errors?
Yep. Something like 70% of planted acres in the U.S. rely on GPS-guided gear. Farmers said their tractors were acting like they were possessed.
Possessed tractors. That paints a picture, doesn't it?
It really does. And it showed the impact isn't always just the signal cutting out. It can be severe precision degradation.
That's a really key point. As someone using GPS daily, thinking about precision loss, not just blackout, that's quite eye-opening, changes the perspective.
Exactly. It's nuanced.
What about, say, the power grid? Is that equally vulnerable to a G2, or does it usually take something bigger?
Well, the power grid is definitely at risk, too. From something called geomagnetically induced currents, GICs.
GICs, right.
These currents can flow through the power lines, sort of induced by the storm, and they can damage critical kit like the big high-voltage transformers.
Okay. And has that happened from moderate storms?
Think back to the 1989 Quebec blackout.
Oh yeah, the whole province went dark, didn't it?
The entire province plunged into darkness for 9 hours, and it happened fast, less than 90 seconds. That was caused by GICs from a storm that was strong, but not Carrington-level extreme.
So, not the biggest imaginable storm, but still enough to cause a massive blackout.
Precisely. It highlights the vulnerability. And then you've got satellites in aviation, too.
How are they affected?
For satellites, especially the ones in low Earth orbit, LEO.
Like Starlink and others?
Exactly. They can experience increased atmospheric drag. The atmosphere literally puffs up slightly.
Okay. And that means?
It slows them down, shortens their operational lifespan. For aviation, high-frequency radio, the kind needed for polar flights, it can just become unusable.
So flights might need rerouting.
Potentially, yeah. Plus, there's increased radiation exposure for crew and passengers up at high altitudes, especially over the poles.
Okay, so we've covered farming, power, satellites, aviation. very real impacts.
Yeah.
What's actually being done then in response to this specific G2 forecast? How does that help us, the end users?
Well, given this forecast, critical infrastructure operators, they're on heightened alert.
Okay.
And that directly benefits you because the systems you rely on, power, GPS, communications, they're getting extra scrutiny.
So practical steps.
Power grid operators are boosting their monitoring for those GICs we mentioned, trying to prevent issues. Satellite operators are ready to switch spacecraft into safe mode if needed.
Protecting the hardware.
Exactly. Protecting the services you rely on. And longer term, there's constant investment in better space weather forecasting, making infrastructure more resilient, like adding GIC blocking devices, making GPS algorithms more robust.
And coordination must be key, too.
Absolutely.
Huh?
International and national coordination through groups like NOAA's SWPC here in the U.S. or the European Space Agency's Space Weather Office, that's crucial.
Right. So as we kind of wrap this up, it seems really clear that even a moderate G2 storm isn't something to just shrug off. It can genuinely shake things up in our hyper-connected world. It's a good reminder, isn't it? These invisible forces, space weather, they're constantly interacting with our really precise technologies, your phone's GPS, the power grid, everything.
It really underscores that deep connection between the cosmos and just our daily lives down here.
Yeah.
And it also highlights our incredible capacity to adapt. As our world gets even more reliant on tech, the challenge is always going to be designing for this kind of resilience, right?
Building it in from the start.
Exactly. Building resilience against these powerful natural forces, it's this continuous evolving effort to make sure our advanced world can, well, handle what the sun throws at us.